we'll be talking about, last week, for those of you who were following, there's a few years ago, the Indian government introduced something called International Day of Yoga. What happens is that the Indian government collaborated with many different other countries, and so many countries today practice and observe this day that is set aside for the recognition of yoga in a person's life. So International Day of Yoga, it's not the practice of yoga in its entirety, but is the practice of one aspect of yoga, which, to be fair or to be practical, is the aspect of yoga that the world knows. All these yoga studios that you see around the world, in the West and different parts of the world, are really there to practice one aspect of yoga. We know the word is yoga, and so we'll give a brief description this morning as to what yoga really is. And you can hear me saying the word yoga. When we read it from the transliteration, we say yoga, and that in itself is not 100% correct. That is because when we use the transliteration, we add a A at the back, and so naturally we pronounce it as yoga. The difference with English and Hindi or Sanskrit is that if we spell it in Sanskrit or in Hindi, you would have ga, for those of you who know a little bit Hindi, to spell the word, and so every Hindi alphabet has a half A in it. Hence, the word is yoga, yoga. But when we add A in transliteration, it becomes yoga. And that's what the world knows today. However, knowledge never hurts us, and so, if we have the right information, then that's a good thing. So the word is yoga. However, that's not the name of the practice. The practice is called Ashtanga Yoga. Ashtang means 8 limbs, right? I'm going to go this information over pretty quickly because it's an extensive topic, but we can only go through it, systematically and with some maintenance of speed, for the lack of a better term. So Asht means 8, Ang means limbs of our body, or you can imagine limbs of a tree. Ang means, like I said, limbs, or we can see them as component parts of our bodies. So Ashtanga Yoga means the practice that involves the 8 limbs of the body, but not limited to that. That is the microcosm. Ashtanga Yoga is a much greater practice of greater importance and benefits. So the word yoga is a Sanskrit word, and its root verb is yud, or yuj, as we may know. And yuj means to yoke. Yoke meaning, for those of us who are from the West Indies, we'll understand when we yoke 2 animals together. In times of yore, in India and the West Indies, we used to plow the fields with cows or different animals, and we yoke them together. So yog has come from this root verb yud, which means to yoke. So we're yoking something together. What are we trying to yoke? The result of yoga is supposed to be uniting, to yoke our individual soul with the universal soul. So that is why it is called yoga. It means to unify, to merge, to combine. However, there's another meaning that we can get, and I see my brother Pandit Dr. Lakshman Hardwar is joining us. So, Dr. G, great to have you. I always invite you to, come and do some presentations for us. You have the knowledge, so, please share it when you feel free. Or whenever you can, feel free to, we can, when we have a satsang, and come by so many people of great knowledge, are joining us, and so it's an honor for me. So we were talking about yut, we were talking about yog, and so yog means to join two things together. But when we join two things together, the other side of the philosophy is that if we join two cows together by their necks, right, then what happens as a result of that? We gain control over those animals. Because there's a rein that is usually tied to the yoke. And because the reins are now tied to the yoke, it gives us control of those animals. In a similar manner, the reason why it means yoke and we should have control is that practicing yoga is practicing to control the breath, to take control of the body, to take control of the mind and the intellect, etc., etc. So we're supposed to have control of all these different aspects or functions of the human body. Just to mention, if I didn't in the beginning, that this yoga that is practiced in the Western world is actually from a Hindu scripture. You don't hear that too often, especially in the Western world. It is preferable for people who practice it not to say where it came from, but this is actually from a Hindu scripture called the Yoga Darshan. A few weeks ago, we talked a little bit more in details about what the darshans are. There are 6 books altogether, and we use their names. Mimamsa, Vedanta Darshan is more popular than others. Nyaya Darshan, we read from that when we talked about karma. Vaisheshik Darshan, Sankhya Darshan, and the more popular one is called the Yoga Darshan. Yoga Darshan is from Maharishi Patanjali. So in this scripture, and this is one of the 6 authentic or orthodox schools of philosophy in Sanatana Dharma. So this is not just a book that was written a few years ago or a few hundred years ago. This is a scripture because it conforms with the Ved. Anything that is accepted as a scripture in Sanatana Dharma has to conform, has to be in total conformity with the Ved. If not, it is rejected by Sanatana Dharma. And so the Yoga Darshan is in full conformity with the Ved, and it has about 195 some places. You will find 196. It's called sutras. Yoga sutras. Sutras means aphorisms. Cryptic verses loaded with information, very small verses. So there are about 195 of those in the Yoga Darshan by Maharishi, of a saint, Maharishi Patanjali. So these 6 books are called the Shata Darshan. And from the practice and the exercise of yoga that is written in Yoga Darshan, we're able to do what? First thing, we're able to destroy impurity. So stay with me here if you can. If you have the children around, they're playing some video games or watching TV, bring them along, because I can guarantee you one thing. Every 3 people, maybe every 10 person you ask what is yoga, or what is real yoga, they'll tell you, yeah, I know that. What is that? Is the thing they practice in the studios. If I were to tell your child that what they practice in the studios and what we see as yoga is just a half of a quarter of what yoga is, right? That means 1/8, not to get too technical. So what we know as yoga in the Western world is 1/8 of what the whole thing is. So this morning, briefly, we'll go through it and try to bring the children, they can have some education. So, people who just go and practice and learn these physical stretches and claim to teach yoga, that is good. That aspect of it is alternative medicine. So it's great. It's not the whole thing. So let the children listen so they can be educated as well. Tell them to take, 20 minutes off the video game they're playing and listen. So this is what yoga is according to the Yoga Darshan. Yama niyamasana pranayam pratyahara dharana dhyana samadhyoshtavangani. That is verse 29 of the 2nd chapter of the Yoga Sutras of Maharishi Patanjali. Now, those of you who know a little bit Hindi would recognize those words. They're very simple. What they mean, that they're 8 limbs of yoga. They're called yam, niyam, asan, pranayam, pratyahara, dharana, dhyan, and samadhi. So we'll talk a little bit about it, but if you observe there, that asan is the third one, meaning physical postures. That is what we know as yoga in the Western world. So we'll give a brief explanation of each step before we close today. So firstly, yam. The first step, the first limb of this practice of yoga, these 8 limbs of yoga, is called yam, and in English it means prohibitions, things that we should prohibit from our lives. What these mean? These refer to our observances and our restraints that regulate our interactions with others. So we must know what to prohibit. We must know that if we meet a friend, he's of a certain way, and we're of a certain way, we don't have to become him. We must maintain our values even though we have, someone that we're affiliated with. So to prohibit that which is not approved by the scripture is what yam is. Generally, this can be considered part of our social discipline. However, like I said before, there are 8 limbs of yoga, but these first 2, yam and niyam, are divided into subparts. So this won't take very long, but you have to listen because we'll be going through it very quickly. So yam is divided into 5 parts. And this is the 30th verse of the 2nd chapter of Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. The first one is ahimsa. Like I said, the verses are very small. So ahimsa means, most people know ahimsa as non-killing. You should be non-violent. What does that mean? We should not kill anybody. No. That's a part of it. That is great. But ahimsa means non-harming, not causing pain to anyone. And as I go through these limbs of yoga, you will find that anyone who knows the scripture even a little bit will find that the Hindu scriptures are flooded with support system from these. Why? Because they're all Hindu scriptures. Every verse that I quote here, you can find verses in Ramayana, Bhagavad Gita, and Veda and Upanishad to support them. That's not what we're trying to establish here, because then we'll sit here until tonight. So ahimsa means not causing pain, not causing harm to anyone. Causing pain can be more harmful than killing somebody. Causing pain by words or by your thoughts can be more destructive than killing somebody. Some people say, sticks and stones can break my bones, but words cannot hurt me. That's not necessarily true. Words can, sometimes someone hits you and they hurt you physically, and after 2 days, it's all gone. They tell you something and you're hurt for the rest of your life. So ahimsa means non-harming in a way where you don't cause pain to others. So one who's firmly established in ahimsa or non-violence will find out, if they practice it steadfastly, that all hostile feelings that they have within them, all hostilities of every kind, will cease to exist if they start practicing non-violence. So the second of yam, the second of the 5 subparts of yam, is called satya. This is the 36th verse. Satya pratishtayang kriya phala sayatvam. 36th verse, 2nd chapter. It means truth and truthfulness. What does it mean? It means non-lying. Satya. I remember a few months ago, I think it was this year, that I read an article in CNN that talks about people who, there's a whole article, you can, maybe if you Google it, you'll be able to find it. People who lie to sound truthful. It's the funniest thing I've read. People make a purposeful, deliberate effort to lie just so that they can sound truthful. Believe it or not. They do this, according to the article, they lie because they want to keep up a particular appearance, a particular reputation, right? Because reputation means what others think about you. So they want to land a good impression on others, so they lie to sound truthful. At least this is what is said by a team of scientists from the UCLA University, and I think another university. If you Google it, you'll find it, in the US, and an Eastern university. They all find the same thing: enough people lie to sound truthful. So this is not something that is tolerated for a yoga practitioner. So the third one is the 37th verse, again in the same chapter. It's called Asteya. Asteya pratishtayang sarvaratnopasthanam. Non-stealing, not only of material things, but non-material things as well. Today we hear, in the news all the time about intellectual property. That's not necessarily a material thing, but that's also stealing. Stealing can be done in so many other ways. My father used to tell me when I used to go pick flowers from him every morning to perform he used to do his sadhana every morning, and he wanted so many flowers that you can't find it in our yard only. I used to walk the village and fill a basket for him. He used to tell me, ensure when you go to these people's houses, you ask them first. I said, but Dad, I go to the same people's house every morning. Why do I? He said, no. If you pick the flower without asking, you're stealing it. So I said, okay, I'll disturb all these people early in the morning. But that was his philosophy. So this is what it means. Don't take things for granted. Anything that is not yours, that doesn't belong to you, if you take it, it is stealing. So we have to get to a point where non-stealing is established in our daily activities. If that happens, then we'll start seeing, great things happen in our lives. We'll start realizing more and more who we are. So the next one is called Brahmacharya. Brahmacharya, there's a huge explanation of Brahmacharya. We'll do it in 30 seconds or less. It's called abstinence. Now, abstinence is one thing, meaning moderation in sensual pleasures. But that's one aspect of what abstinence is, what Brahmacharya is. Brahmacharya actually, from the word Brahman, means walking the path of Brahman, walking the path of spirituality, walking the path of Dharma every day. Not only abstinence, that's only one aspect of walking the path of spirituality. We conserve on so many things, so many thoughts and so many actions. We have to be established in conservation. And when we do so, like we'll find, we can find these aspects, these topics more and more online today. How you grow in energy when you conserve in certain activities. The other one is called aparigraha. What does this mean? It means non-covetousness. Aparigraha hastairte, 39th verse. Non-covetousness, when it is established, knowledge will come to us from many different directions. We won't understand what's happening. Why? Because now we're practicing all these divine traits and values in our life. And so when we're not covetous, we're able to understand life more, not only from a practical standpoint, but from a scriptural standpoint. Maharishi Patanjali says that these steps we should not take as being very elementary. In verse 31, he says that we should take these steps very, very seriously. And don't ever think that, they should be discarded as mild and unimportant, because That's not what we practice in the studio. Anyone who wants to practice the divine side of yoga, or yoga, the real yoga, then we have to take all these things into consideration. So those 5 pieces of yam are called abstentions, things that we abstain from. In verse 3, Maharishi Patanjali goes on to declare that these are universal oaths, and they should be followed by all, and they should not be disrespected in any way, because yoga is about controlling the mind. And when the mind is disturbed by improper thoughts, constant pondering over those things that we're thinking of, then we'll eventually become those things. Because from thought is action. So essentially, if we were to put those together, we become what our thoughts are. Because from actions, when we perform actions, it will form a habit, and our habits will represent who we are. So our thoughts will become that person, or those thoughts that we have, we become that person. So Patanjali is saying that we should not tolerate any thought that is adharmic or not in the best interest of humanity. And the way to combat those thoughts is that when we have those thoughts come to our mind, we should immediately replace them by opposite thoughts. You're thinking something scary, you're thinking something negative, you're thinking something harmful, just immediately go into another thought process. You know, pick up a book you like, or start watching a movie you like, an educational movie. Watch anything that can educate you, anything that can take you away from a negative mindset. Because if you feed it, it will grow. So we don't want to feed. Yoga is about not feeding negative thoughts, because they'll grow and will become that. So thought actions like violence, we don't have to necessarily perform that violence. Yoga Sutra says that if there's violence done by us, or if it is abetted or approved, and we should not make any excuses. Excuses should not be anger, should not be greed, should not be delusion, should not be anything, whether mild, moderate, or intense. Whatever those reasons are, it is our duty to pull away from those thoughts, because the end result of those thoughts will be pain and misery. So the second one, remember, only the first and second ones, they have subsets that we can explain. So the second is called niyam. Niyam means observance. Observance are what? Injunctions. Niyam helps us to acquire qualities that are conducive to meditation. You know, every week here we practice meditation. So when you practice niyam in your life, you'll be able to have those qualities that will help you in your meditation. So observance and restraints should be the things that govern our individual life. We should have restraint, and we should be able to observe. We should be able to know that which is right from that which is wrong by observing, and we should be able to restrain ourselves from being a part of those activities if they're not conducive to what we do. So these form the personal discipline. There's a set of disciplines that we have to live by. And if we don't live by disciplines, then we're just living. We're just going by. We can be a driftwood that is tossed around by the water, whichever direction it goes in. But these have to be practiced, because these are traits of a sadhak, a person seeking God. So the 5 niyams very quickly are Sauch. Sauch is the first one. It means purity, physical and mental purity. Our hygienes, we always talk about our hygienes here on this program, that hygiene is not only physical, but it's also mental. Meditation is a mental hygiene. And especially in this time of COVID-19, it is imperative for us to be extra careful when it comes to our physical hygiene. Ramayana tells us, Niramala manajana so mohi pava. Why should we try to become pure? Because Bhagavan Sri Ram told Sugriv, only the pure in heart will attain me. Other scriptures say the same thing. So Sauch means physical and mental purity, the practice of purification. The other one is, we heard of Santosh. And so Santosh is verse 42 of the same chapter, chapter 2. Santosh means that we should not see the need to go externally for happiness or peace of mind that we'd like to enjoy. Why? Because if we're doing that, it means that we're not content with what we have. Going externally means doing adharmic things, doing things that are risky, that are unlawful, etc. So this is Santosh. We must be in an ever-present contented state of mind. And when we are, we will gain supreme joy, because this is a divine quality. Going outside, meaning most of us know of Aesop's fables. We've been reading them since we were very little. And we know that this one is very popular, of the person losing a quarter in the house where it's dark and going outside and searching for it. Why? Because he's searching under the lantern, under the light on the street. Someone asked him, what are you doing? I'm looking for my quarter. Where did it fall? It fell in the house. Why are you looking here? Because that's not how it works. It means going externally to find what is inside. So contentment brings a gain of, according to Patanjali, a gain of superlative happiness. So the third of the niyam is tapa. Tapa means to what? Tapasya. Right? This is the 43rd verse. Tapasa karendaya siddhir shuddhi kshayat tapasaha. 43rd verse, chapter 2. That by physical tapas, for example, when we're fasting, we burn out extra fat, right? When we fast. That is a form of tapasya, physical tapasya. Because tapasaha means to burn. It means austerities. It means penance. But these physical ones, we can do them. For example, we do tapasya and we burn fat. We burn fat along with the toxins in our bodies that we have accumulated after so long, not eating properly, for example. But there's also mental tapasya. What is this? Mental tapasya is more important even. We burn all our old impressions that we've developed over uncountable lifetimes and for our whole life, in this life. We've developed impressions in our mind. We've decided things that is true for us that are not necessarily true. It's just our truth. These are impressions that we have developed. When we do tapasya, we'll burn those impressions away. We can do verbal tapasya. Verbal tapasya is observing silence. To control your speech, remember that to yoke means to take control. So verbal tapasya meaning maun vrat, not speaking unnecessarily, observing silence. This is also a divine quality. So when we observe silence, there's a much greater chance that we'll get into trouble. Just see things and ignore them if they can bring no benefit to you or anyone around you. Don't speak only because you're able to. So in verbal tapasya, we can practice Maun Vrat. The great Mahatma Gandhi had a person with him as an advisor who was practicing Maun Vrat. Can you believe that? For years and years, this person practicing Maun Vrat, yet he was an advisor of Gandhi because, silence is a strong message. So verbal tapasya, we can go so much into this, but we have other aspects to cover. So when we burn these things, any aspect, you know, we're burning the need to speak, we're burning fat from our bodies, we're burning impressions of the mind, because tapasya means to burn. Then naturally when we burn, we'll feel some pain, right? If you stand close to a fire, what happens? You feel the heat. If you get burned, you feel the pain. Which means that we'll have to undergo some suffering in order to grow, to do the right thing. So tapasya here from this standpoint also means to accept suffering. If someone suffers, it means that some kind of impurities are burnt out, are purged out. For anyone to have pure gold, when you find it in the ground, you can't even recognize it as gold. It is only by burning that only the pure gold is left. Only by burning it, the heat. So when we experience this burning, this pain in our day-to-day lives, it means that we're getting rid of something that is good. We can't just reject it and say, oh, what is God doing to me? Why do I have to feel this pain? Why is all these things happening? Look at things from a spiritual, a divine standpoint and say, this was Ishwar ka prasad. Every time something happens that we perceive to be bad, we say, why me? A good question to ask is, why not me? Because if you ask, why not you, then you're ready to learn from those lessons. So in order to make our minds clean and steady, we have to accept some level of discomfort, some level of pain at some point in time. Because the more pain, the more gain. And most of us know, those who go to the gym especially, no pain, what? No gain. We cannot expect to be comfortable every single moment in our life, what we consider to be comfort or being comfortable, and we want to grow, we will not. And then the argument will be, isn't that what average people do? You sit comfortably and you get everything? The response to that is why they're average. Average people behave a certain way. People who are not average are willing to undergo this suffering and this pain to grow mentally, to grow materially, to grow spiritually. If we think about it, even a piece of cloth must undergo, tapasya to become clean, right? When you take a piece of cloth to the laundryman, what does he do? Does he fold it up nicely and spray some perfume or some sandalwood and puts a flour on it and give it back to you and say, it's okay now, it's clean? No. First he'll soak it in boiling water. Then he'll add soap to it. Then he'll, like in Guyana or in the West Indies, we beat the cloth with a wooden thing, I don't know what is, bita, that's what we used to call it, I don't know the English name. So the cloth goes through a lot of suffering. But when we do it here, we put it in hot water and then we beat it, and then, for example, if you use a dryer or a washing machine, the cloth goes in there and it's tumbling, it's rolling, and it's being squeezed in different directions and for an extended period of time in the washing machine. And after that, then you have to dry it. So then it's put in the dryer. That's a hot chamber. As though that is not enough, when you finish, then you have to iron it. That's heat again. So the cloth goes through a lot of pain and suffering. Why? To become pure. To become something better. When that happens to the cloth, that is when it loses all the dirt and the grime that was on it. It undergoes tremendous tapasya. And the laundryman, you think he hates the cloth? That's why he's doing that to it? No, he has no hatred for the cloth. But he does these things because this is the process in order for the cloth to become clean. He has no attachment, no hate or like for the cloth. He only wants to make it pure. So, in a similar manner, it is out of love that things happen in the world, God's love, that we perceive to be pain and suffering. Why? Because Bhagavan knows that the mind also must be washed. It must be squeezed, it must be tossed and dried and ironed. If not, it will not become pure. And how do we attain God? Nirmal man jan so mohi pava. Only the pure in heart will attain God. So when these things happen to us, let us not think that, this is just pain for us and there's only pain in the universe and God hates us. And rather see it as Bhagavan being kind enough to help us, to purify ourselves. We can use this as an opportunity to purify ourselves, to become a greater person, to delve deeper into our spirituality. The impurities of our body and our senses will be destroyed if we see this COVID-19 thing as an opportunity. Those of us who come out on the other side, why should we have wasted the opportunity? We should have used it to grow. It is still going on, so let's use it to grow. So let's do tapasya, mentally and all other ways. So the perfection of the sense organs and the body and the destruction of impurity or impurities, when you put all of this together, this is called tapasya. Tapasya is not only going to the forest and giving up life in a cave and doing meditation. We have to do tapasya every day. So the other one, number 4 in the niyams, is swadhyay, and swadhyay is self-study. Right? Swadhyayatish devata samprayoga. Swadhyay means self-study. Actually, swadhyay means the study of spiritual books. We see the word ishta here, means that when we study spiritual books, we'll get closer and closer to our ishtadev, to our preferred form of God. And when we study this, then we'll understand the glories of God. For example, if you're a devotee of Hanumanji, then you only want to sing Hanuman Chalisa over and over. You don't know the meaning. The meaning is available in English. So now we can go and look at the meaning, and then when we chant, we'll understand the meaning. Then we're glorifying God. That is prayer, glorifying God. So when we do that, when we do swadhyay, we'll have more knowledge about God and spirituality and our favorite form of God. We'll understand the glories. And our love, when we chant knowing the meaning, then our love for God will grow. Outside of that, we're just asking Bhagavan for things. I see my Mamu has joined us. I'm not sure if he's joining us now or he was there. Pranayama, my Mamu Pandit Hari Prasad from California. So we're talking that when these things happen to us in our life, we should see it as an opportunity. Yes, it is difficult. Yes, it is scary. Yet it makes us think, why is it happening? But if we worry about those things, they will not help us in any way. This is the only time that we should worry. According to the Dalai Lama, he says, why worry? If you have control of things, why worry? And why worry if you don't have control of things? What he means is, why worry if you have control of things? Take control. And why worry if you don't have control of things? You can't do anything about it. Worrying is not going to help. It will put you in a worse position. Take hold of the things that you have control over, and everybody feels better. So the last one, number 5, is Ishwara Pranidhana. A life of dedication, a life of offering everything to God. Remember we talked about this a few weeks ago? Complete surrender to Ishwar. We've been repeating Ishwar Ka Prasad. When we see things happening in the world, we should know that this is for a reason. It is for a reason, whether we want to accept that or not. And COVID-19 is no different. It is here for a reason. And for those of us who are fortunate to come out on the other side, like I said before, we should just grow. There are many people who died, wasn't planning on dying, but it happened. So we should make this a lasting impression on our minds. Let us come out much, much bigger and greater on the other side. This will only happen if we do Ishwara Pranipad, if we have complete surrender to Ishwar, meaning that, God, I understand, you've done this for some reason. You know, Swami Shivananda says that convert every work into yoga. How? With the magic wand of right attitude. If we have the right attitude in anything and everything that happens to us in life, then whatever is happening, if it's a bad thing, will not necessarily harm us. But we have to have the right attitude, and the right attitude can come from our knowledge in the scriptures, and we know that we should offer everything to God, and know that whatever happens, God is not ignorant of it. He knows about it. He would have had to approve it, because he has the power to take it away, but he didn't. So it is for a reason, and let our reason be a positive one, a beneficial one. So Swami Shivananda says that even when you're washing dishes, you know, he says that if you handle them gently, they make a beautiful sound. It sounds like music. And if you throw them around in anger and haste, then they'll cry, they'll scream, and what happens? They'll hurt your ear. That even your dishwashing should be something that you offer to God, meaning practicing bhakti, practicing devotion to God. When we do that, samadhi will be attained. So these 10 things that we have explained, my dear friends, yam and niyam, these 10 things are 5 and 5 for each yam and niyam. They're the first 2 steps of yoga. Remember, it has 8 steps. We will not explain the other steps in so many details. We'll just go through them quickly. But you can see what we're talking about. The yoga that we hear of is just physical posture, and this is a spiritual thing we're talking about. So the third one, this is the one we know about. It's called asana. Asana is written in the Sthira Sukhamasanam 46th verse, chapter 2, Patanjali Yoga Sutras. What is interesting of the 195 verses in the Yoga Sutras, only 3 of these verses are assigned to or define what asana is. Patanjali has only devoted 3 verses to asana. On the contrary, most of the world know this to be what yoga is, or yoga as we call it. It's the smallest part of the 8 limbs. But like we said, it is asana, it is a posture, and it helps us to be stable and to be comfortable. Because to do meditation, we need to be comfortable, we need to be strong. As soon as we sit in any particular position, most people try to sit on the ground or something. There's a small cramp here, and there's a tiny little pain over there, and we have to move this way, and we have to move that way, and we're continuously reminded our legs freeze up, and our hands are uncomfortable, and we have to move, we have to stand up a little bit and sit again, because we're not physically intact. And this is the reason for asana. So except the body is physically healthy or perfectly healthy and free from all toxins and tensions, a comfortable pose is not easily obtained if we want to do meditation. That's why these days when we do meditation, we say take a comfortable posture. But if you want to meditate for hours and you take a comfortable posture on the sofa or something, after 20 minutes, half an hour, you fall asleep. If you do a proper yogasana, you will not fall asleep. And you'll not even feel the body. So not only the physical, but the mental toxins that we talked about earlier, these things create a stiffness for us. The mental toxins create tensions for us. And the physical toxins create a discomfort physically. Only if we're flexible, if we're supple, then we'll not be able to see, because if you're not flexible, you'll break. And if you're not flexible mentally, you wouldn't even sit there, you would not have made the decision. Because we're too stiff. And anything that is stiff, will break. Or can break easier. So there's a little, before we move on to the other three, the last 3 points, there's a little story that I remember of a conversation between a weed and a big tree. So both the weed and the big tree grew up on the bank of a swiftly running river in the jungle. This particular weed was on the upper side of the tree, and the big tree was on the lower side, closer to the river. One day the tree looked down at this little weed and said, "Hey, you puny little creature, why do you stand near me? Aren't you ashamed to be by my side? Don't you see how great I am? How big I am? How tall I am? Don't you see how strong I am? Even an elephant cannot move me if he comes here. But look at you. You should not have even come here to begin with. That people will see the difference and laugh at you when they look at my size and your size. Why don't you move someplace else?" The weed bent her head and said, "Sir, what can I do? I did not come here on purpose. I just happened to be here. That I know I'm not strong and as stiff as you, but please pardon my presence." "All right," the big tree says, "but just remember your place." In the meantime, this conversation happened during the rainy season. And the very next day, a heavy rain came and inundated the entire forest, inundated the jungle, flooding the jungle and causing a terrible flood. And as we know, when a river floods, what happens? When the water is gushing so harshly downstream, what happens? It washes the banks of the river away with it. Because it comes with such force that the water pulls everything down that is next to it. Even a great big tree. But what happened when it was pulling the tree away, the little weed, she bent down. She flattened herself completely and she let the water run over her. When the flood passed, she rose up again. And looking out, she couldn't see the tree. What happened to this great, big, powerful tree? I don't see it. And from very far, she heard, the tree is replying, "Oh, I'm over here. I'm being pulled down by the water. I should have listened to you. I should have been as humble as you. I should have been as flexible as you and simple as you. If I was, I wouldn't have been pulled away. I wouldn't have been destroyed." So in life, if we practice yoga, let us don't be too stiff. If we're too stiff physically, we can't practice yoga. And if we're too stiff mentally, we'll find all kinds of faults with it. So let's not be stiff, even socially. So the problem of what to do with the toxins inside the body, Patanjali says, the reason why this one is called asana is that he says to get rid of them, we have to squeeze the body in different directions. And when we do so, practicing asana, then we'll be able to get rid of. So that's one. This is why it's called alternative medicine. It gets rid of the toxins in the body. So the effect of asana is mental in nature, and it brings freedom and it brings victory over conflicts that we have mentally and physically, conflict of discomfort, etc. So the practice of asana, according to Maharishi Patanjali, is designed to become better at your meditation. And if you practice asana without meditating, then that is equal to preparing a very lavish meal without eating it. This is according to the Yoga Sutras. So moving on quickly, the next one is called Pranayama. After asana is Pranayama. We talked about this a few weeks ago. The last word in the 49 verses, Pranayamaha, that your breathing should be slow, you should be gentle, you should be controlled, and you should not have any agitation. Those things would be achievable only if we practice. You remember a few weeks ago, we talked about Anulom Vilom, breathing exercise. We did a demonstration as to how you should do it. Because breathing, according to the 50th verse in Yoga Sutras, should be Dirgha Suksham, that the breath should be long and slow. When we're fearful, we start breathing quickly. When we relax, like in meditation, we take long, full breaths. The fifth one is Pratyahara. This means sense withdrawal. This is the fifth aspect of the 8 aspects of what is called yoga. Remember, the third one is asana. So the fifth one, sense withdrawal. Pratyahara, the 54th verse says, is the drawing in of the sense organs by giving up their objectives. Meaning that the sense organs will always see something external that you will like, and it will draw you towards that thing. Pratyahara is to control those organs and focus them inwardly. Withdrawal of the senses from their objects is called pratyahara. You know, like a tortoise, we see the tortoise withdraws its limbs into the shell. So if we behave like the tortoise, drawing the senses in, then this marks a transition of mind from being what? Extroverted into being introverted. Meaning, not introverted in a negative way, introverted meaning that we're focusing more inside and not outside. It is a process of retracting the sensory experience from the external objects. Because every time we can count on it, that the senses will tell the mind as soon as there's something available outside. Oh, there's a wonderful thing in the showcase over there. So come on, why don't we buy it? People go window shopping. Oh, I'm not going to buy anything, I'm just going window shopping and look in every window in the mall, in the store, and then they end up coming home with 2 bags full. Why? Because they see it, and their mind says, the eyes see it, and all of a sudden you want it. Something in the glass case there. Let's buy it, and it happens. Or the nose says, hey, do you smell that? It smells so wonderful. We should investigate what it is. And I think you should, get ready, wash your hands. It's COVID-19, so wash your hands. Let's get ready to eat this. Something nice is being cooked because the nose smells it. The mind at that point may have even been quiet until the nose smells something. But the nose will not allow the mind to be quiet anymore because it's saying to you, hey, this smells really good, let's go and have it. Something is being prepared, the tongue says. And what happens? You start salivating. Saliva is ready. And what happens? You want to eat it. The eye says, let's take a look at it, see what it is. And the tongue says, I think looking at this, it will taste really good, we should have it. So this is what this aspect of yoga teaches us, to have control over those things. That we must have a good rein. Remember we talked about the rein in the beginning? We must have a good rein over these turbulent senses because they will draw us in every different direction. Because the senses are in effect a gateway that allows externals to come into the mind. By themselves, the senses are innocent. But when they're allowed to turn outside, externally, they attract everything they see and hear and smell, and they transfer those messages to the mind. And then you become restless until you get that thing. So if the senses are allowed to see outside, they try to grasp that picture of the outside, and they turn it inward like a mirror. You know, you turn a mirror outside or outward, it reflects what is outside. If you turn it inward, it reflects pure light. It reflects what it sees inside. So pratyahara here is not consciously closing one's eyes, you know, to the sensory world. That's not what we're talking about. It is consciously closing one's mind processes to the sensory world. So pratyahara empowers one to stop being controlled by the external world. And because of that, you'll be able to attain knowledge, and you'll be able to experience freedom. These are all things that we're born with. So the seventh one is dharana, meaning concentration. Dharana, in the third chapter this time, this is the first verse, dharana is holding the mind to one place, to one object or an idea. Again, Yoga Sutras explain it as a steady, uninterrupted flow of identical thoughts. The comparison given in the scripture is that of a stream of oil. And that the stream remains motionless, even though the oil inside the stream is in constant motion. That this is what dharana is. That even though things are in constant motion in your life, your mind remains motionless. You're confining the mind to one place or one object of one choice. This is the first stage of meditation, where one learns how to keep the wandering mind in one object. That is what we practice every week. We focus on a favorite form of God, etc., and try to keep our concentration on that form of God. So in dharana, you're training the mind to do concentration, because concentration is the beginning of meditation. And meditation, as we know, is the culmination of concentration. If you have no concentration, if you cannot concentrate, you cannot meditate. That's simple. So the culmination of concentration is meditation. So that is what dharana is. When we make those efforts to keep distractions away. And dhyan, and then samadhi. Dhyan is meditation. That was number 6, this is number 7. Again in the second verse, tatra pratyaya katanata dhyanam. Second verse, third chapter, Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. That dhyan is a continuous flow. When we gently close our eyes and try to bring a mental picture. We talked about a continuous flow in the last one. So now this flow would help us to keep our concentration on one particular object. If we're able to do this, if we are able to do dharana, then we'll be able to be successful at dhyan. Remember, concentration and meditation. So dhyan is meditation. So you gently close the eyes and you try to bring a mental picture. It's something we practice every week, that an object of concentration, you know, first that's why they said this is what we can use the murtis for. We look at the murti. We make a copy of that murti mentally, and then we close the eyes and try to see that murti. That is what we call Rup Dhyan in our meditation. We see that same thing we would have seen externally with our eyes closed. So when we master this, we'll be able to meditate. It's like a photography, for example. You take a picture. You know, a long time ago, we used to take pictures and we have a negative. The picture's on the film. Then you send it to wash, to clean it, at the store. And when you send it there, the technician finds out that there's no picture. Because we don't know whether the picture is on the film or not. We took the picture, but it has to be developed. So if nothing comes out, then what do you have to do? You have to take the picture all over again. So the same thing, when you're doing meditation, when you lose the object of meditation, then take the picture all over again. Start over all over again. Try to keep the focus, the concentration on one single object, and then that is meditation. So Patanjali defines dhyan as concentration when there is a stretching of only one experience, right? That is simple. So we have to be able to get there, and then if we get there, the last step of yoga is what is called samadhi. And samadhi is absorption. And the third verse of the third chapter, samadhi, the last word of that is samadhi, is when only the object shines forth and reveals itself to you. The object that you wanted to keep in the imagination, you only see that object. It's now fixed in you. You will get to a point where when you fix your mind on that object, then after a while, when you're able to stay into meditation, it will become like sleep, but you're not sleeping. You are now being merged in that object. We try to focus the mind on the form of God. So if you imagine Sri Krishna, Bhagavan Ram, Hanumanji, Lakshmi, whatever form of God, and you keep the mind on this object fixated for long enough, then at some point in time you will be merged into that object and it will become like sleep. This is what is called samadhi. So during dhyan, when we're doing dhyan, meditation, 7th one, the meditator remains separate from meditation, right? Because there are three things. There's the meditator, there's the meditation, and there's the object of meditation. So the meditator is us. The meditation is the practice, and the object is what we're meditating on. When all these three become one, and you start experiencing, like you're asleep, not knowing what's happening, but still not sleeping, you're merged into God, and after a while, you come out of meditation and life is normal. This is when you freeze time. Whenever you're in meditation like that in samadhi, time doesn't count. You will not age, etc. So many beautiful things, all the results of meditation that we know. But that is what is called samadhi. So this is the ideal extent to which we want to get when we practice meditation. However, before we close this morning, I want to add a little caveat. We'll add this and then we'll close. This is what it is. Jai Ram जज्ञन ज्ञाना एकाधार राम गुण गाना एकाधार राम गुण गाना जय राम श्री राम जय जय राम श्री राम जय राम जय जय राम श्री राम जय राम जय जय राम श्री राम जय राम जय जय राम. So here's what I wanted to add. This is from Uttarkand of Ramcharitmanas, a katha with Kag Busundi. Kali Yuga Keval Hari Gunagana Gavat Narupavahi Bhavatava. So, a few weeks ago, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, explained what enabled people in all different yugas to attain God. And we talked about that in Kali Yuga, we have a particular specific prescription, and that is Kali Yuga Keval Hari Gunagana. To chant lovingly the name of God, because I'll be doing Shravan Bhakti, hearing, you'll be doing Kirtan Bhakti. Kirtan Bhakti is chanting, and that will lead to what really affords us to attain God, Smaran Bhakti. When you do those things, we'll be able to remember, right? We talked about that. But here in the third line, this is what it says. Kali Yuga Jogana Jagyana Jnana Eka Adhara Ram Gunagana. It mentions the word, and this is mentioned in many other parts of Ramayana. There's a beautiful chaupai when Bhagavan Shankar himself was saying to Garud, Milahina Raghupati Binu Anuraga Kiye Joga Tapagyan Vairagya. Shivji himself was saying to Garudji that in this age of Kali Yuga, only bhakti works. So Kali Yuga Jog, Jag, Gyan, those things they will help you in life, but not take you to God's abode. If you practice yoga, the way we explained it, it will even give you self-realization. You will realize, Aham Brahmasmi, that I am not the body, I am the soul, but even that is not enough. So what we have to do in Kali Yuga, we have to follow the prescription. When we follow it, those same yogic exercises that we perform, the 8 forms of yoga, we couple it with what? With bhakti. How do we do that? We do those as an offering to God, having God in our mind, being grateful for everything that He has done for us, being able to do these practices. When we do that as an offering, remember, Swami Satchidananda says even washing the dishes to be an offering to God. So when you do these practices and you do it as an offering to God, this is called bhakti. Because it is very clear here that if we do yoga only as an exercise, it will take us, possibly if we perfect it, it will take us to self-realization, and self-realized people are not God-realized people. They become happy, extremely happy in life, but they don't attain God because they wouldn't have practiced bhakti. But it is very simple. Just a change in mindset and your yogic practices would lead you to attain Bhagavan. So we've been trying to no avail for the last few weeks to finish our satsang earlier and earlier, and we're not able to do that. So we want to close with our little meditation here. Every week I'm being reminded that why am I not closing if I don't have time and not doing a bhajan. So let's do a small bhajan and then we'll do our meditation. Familiar bhajan. It will take us 90 seconds. So group your voices together as we sing to Bhagavan. This is one form of bhakti, right? Bhaja Govinda. Bhaju Murli Manohar Nandlala Bhaju Radhe Govinda Gopala Bhaju Radhe Govinda Gopala. भजु राधे गोविंद Nandalala. So a little dhun instead of the bhajan. This will finish quicker. Radhe Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Radhe Radhe, Radhe Sham, Sham Sham, Radhe Radhe, Radhe Krishna, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Radhe Radhe, Radhe Sham, Sham Sham, Radhe Radhe, Radhe Krishna, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Radhe Radhe, Radhe Krishna, Krishna Krishna Krishna, Radhe Radhe, Radhe Sham, Sham Sham, Radhe Radhe, Radhe Sham, Sham Sham, Radhe Radhe, Radhe Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Radhe Radhe, Radhe Sham, Sham Sham, Radhe Radhe, Radhe Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Radhe Radhe, Radhe Sham, Sham Sham, Radhe Radhe, Radhe Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Radhe Radhe, Radhe Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Radhe Radhe, Radhe Sham, Sham Radhe Radhe, Radhe Sham, Sham Radhe, Radhe Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Radhe Radhe, Radhe Sham, Sham Radhe, Radhe Sham, Sham Radhe Radhe, Radhe Sham, Radhe Sham Radhe Radhe, Radhe Sham, Sham Radhe Radhe, Radhe Sham, Sham Radhe. Vrindavan Bihari Lal ki jai.